Advanced care planning. This is something which I actually don't even know. Does everybody know what advanced care planning is?
No.
So this is my definition of what advanced care plan is. So it's the process of planning for your future healthcare. I have an advanced care plan. I don't have cancer, but I've done an advanced care plan. So in that support, I actually think it's something that primarily metastatic breast cancer probably is more relevant than early breast cancer, because if you have early breast cancer, your hopes are that you receive the best treatment and you're going to be cured. So you're going to live a normal lifespan and die of whatever you were going to die of. If you have metastatic breast cancer, you know that by and large it's regarded as an incurable disease. It's absolutely a treatable disease, but the vast majority of women with metastatic breast cancer will probably die younger than they should because of that. And so having an advanced care plan, I think, is a really important part. Obviously not the first thing you discuss when you are told you've got metastatic breast cancer, but it's an important part of the conversation between yourself and your partner and family, but importantly between yourself and your treating oncologist and team. Enduring power of guardianship is a bit different, because what it's saying is that right now I know exactly what I want to do with my life. But in the event that I get sick, or I'm too sleepy, or I'm feeling really, really unwell, I trust someone enough that I want them to be my guardianship for my healthcare plan. And that's a good thing as well. Now, obviously you don't have to discuss that at an early point, but that's also something to think about. If you've got a loved one that knows what your wishes are, you know they're going to make the right decision for you if you're not in a position to make that decision for yourself. So I've just listed from my point of view why I think it's a good idea for patients, because I think it really gives you a very good opportunity. And it's not just a one-time point. You might want to revise what your wishes are as your treatment progresses and as your response progresses and as your cancer potentially progresses. But it gives you the ability to input what your choices are for your care in the event that you'll get sicker and sicker with your cancer. It also allows you to openly, and I guess without as much emotion, at a time where things are in play for you to receive treatment, to have that time and I guess comfort to actually discuss openly with your family how you see your future, whether it's better or worse depending on what the treatment is. I think it also opens up the conversation. I've certainly had many discussions with loved ones where they've said to me separately to the patient, and we just haven't been able to talk about it because if I bring it up, it's like I'm taking away the hope. It's like me believing that he's not going to respond. And it's a really, really tough call. So I think having that open discussion when things are going well, when you are responding, it's actually probably the most sensible time to have it. Okay? And importantly, I think it's also making sure that you have the time to make sure, without any confusion, what your wishes are, if and when you get to the point where you are entering the terminal phase of your disease. We all are going to die, some earlier than others. And I think if you have the opportunity, because you've had a diagnosis that may impact on your survival, you want to think, whether you articulate it early or a bit later on, but you want to articulate what your wishes are when there comes a point in time where your treating doctor says, I am not recommending more active treatment because it's not going to work, you're too unwell, I don't want to make you feel sicker than you are. I want to add into the palliative phase only of your treatment. And I'll just make a point. Please be aware that as an oncologist, and I think I speak across this for all my peers, whenever you treat a patient with metastatic cancer, wherever that cancer is, you are actually providing palliative care from that moment. Yes, as an oncologist, I provide palliative care by giving the best drugs, the best doses, the best monitoring, but I'm trying to palliate the symptoms and the harm that the cancer is doing to that patient. So, palliative care is not synonymous with terminal care. Terminal care is at that timing point where there's a very high probability that active treatment isn't going to work and your health is deteriorating and you are likely to die in the next few days, next few weeks, next few months. And there's a big difference between those two components. And it's good for you to be able to say that and know that your family mean that as well. Because again, with the patients I've had the pleasure and privilege of taking care of, even with some patients I've taken care of for, 2 or 3 or 4 years with metastatic disease, there was a bit of lack of clarity because they never talked about it at home. Speaking as a healthcare provider, but again, I think I reflect the sentiments of a lot of my colleagues, it actually allows me to have an accurate understanding of how much of your illness, how much of your prognosis, how much do you want to know at various times of your illness. And so having that ability to say, I know what is potentially up ahead of me, and I want you to tell me at every time point what the options are, what the likelihood of response are, that is a good relationship to have with your treating oncologist. Rather than saying, I don't want to hear about it, just give me what you think is best. I don't want percentages because that will just take away my hope. And look, sometimes that people don't want to know percentages, and I absolutely respect that. But sometimes you need to at least have a little bit of an idea of what it is that you need to know about so you don't have unrealistic expectations. And I think one of the things I always like to say is that, some patients have really, really strong, long-lasting relationships with their family doctor. And I'm a big believer in involving family doctors to be part of the treating team. And it's always so important that every healthcare provider that manages the one patient, we're all on the same page. We're not telling you slightly different things or giving you the wrong information. And that's such a big part of what we try to do as a multidisciplinary group here at BCRCWA.
Sorry, just a quick one, Alan. Sorry, I was in part of that think tank about the government's push to, euthanasia as an option recently, and so obviously that early involvement with the GP was really important. Has that sort of taken effect where the GP can get involved now, and if you are in that terminal phase where you can make that an option to go out peacefully with family?
Okay, so you've got a few questions embedded in that. So already we involve the GP when we can. There are some patients who have a family practice they go to, but they may not see the same GP. And there are many others who have a dedicated GP, knows them well. Yeah. In terms of the voluntary active the euthanasia program, it is going to come into effect, I believe, in the first or second week of July. Now, unfortunately, the information for healthcare providers only just came out about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so it's something that I have no doubt will be a topic of conversation in various clinics and consulting rooms for months to come. For those of you who know me, I will be very open with you. I am not a proponent for voluntary euthanasia. I actually spoke on behalf of the parliamentary group that wanted to highlight what the potential dangers are. And seeing you brought it up, I'm just going to tell you why I have the stance that I have. I have absolutely 110% commitment to making sure when I believe that one of my patients is going to die soon, they have a good death.
Yeah.
I absolutely believe that that is possible in the large majority of patients. And to do that means I know what their wishes are. I know what the concerns the patient has about their loved ones. I know what the patient is most fearful about in the process of dying. Some say it's pain. Some say they can't breathe. Some say I can't do what I normally do. So understanding what is the priority for that patient allows me and my team to, as much as we can, with medicines and strategies and allied health team, meet that patient's need. So in my understanding, there is actually no reason why someone would actually want to be injected or take pills. The only reason that you would want to do that is that it's very important that you say, I want to choose the time when it happens. Now, I respect that if that's an important part of your belief system, but to be honest, with the review, and there were lots of meetings with a whole lot of different people, both for and against, that came to be a very small part of the rationale for the bill. It was more about putting up euthanasia as an option for people to take at a point in time when they had an incurable illness, because the VAD bill doesn't apply to just cancer patients. It can be for neuromuscular degenerative diseases as well. My greatest fear is that when this bill is active, that you will have a patient newly diagnosed with metastatic cancer, be it breast or otherwise, gets referred to a doctor who is a big believer in, I have treatments to offer you, but is a big believer in I'm not going to cure you. You're going to ultimately die. It's now legal for me to discuss euthanasia if that's something that you want.
Yeah, they expedite.
Well, no, you're not allowed to. It's very, very clear in the bill. You cannot initiate the conversation. It has to be from the patient. It cannot be from a patient family members. I mean, look, at the end of the day, how do you prove that? You've got to rely on the integrity of the people. But my greatest fear is that somebody diagnosed with an incurable illness doesn't get the opportunity to have the best treatment. Some of you will know, after the first treatment doesn't work, the second treatment may work a bit, then the third treatment, the fourth. So for breast cancer, in my field of expertise, I've got multiple lines of treatment to offer people at different stages and if that's what they want. So it really frightens me to think that there may be a GP who's a big believer in euthanasia, says, okay, well, have your first round of chemo. Oh, you did terribly. It only worked for 6 months. Your oncologist is offering you another treatment. Euthanasia is legal now. And it's going to be promoted because there are a big group of, I think, healthcare providers who actually believe in that. So even though it's not legal for them to bring it up, it is going to be part of the conversation. So my greatest fear is that men and women with potentially incurable cancer won't be offered the best treatment throughout the trajectory of their illness.
Yeah, got it.
And I don't know how to protect people from that. Yeah.
Great. Good
I
to know.
attended an education session about VAD, and one of the things on there was that you have to be dying within 6 months. What crystal ball do we have?
I mean, look, if you think about it, if you've got metastatic cancer and you either aren't a believer in conventional medicine or you've had one line of treatment and it didn't work, it's a bit like the terminal illness insurance policies that we as oncologists do all the time. Is life expectancy less than 6 months? Is it less than 12 months? Well, the short answer is it could be. There might be a 1% chance you'll die in 6 months, but if there's even an iota of possibility, so that meeting that endpoint is not a rigorous endpoint.
So at that point on that insurance policy, you've got to look after the person and say yes. So
In insurance policy, I say yes.
yeah.
For allowing the patient to be access to VAD, I don't know whether that's the right thing. And, you don't want to be caught as a doctor who, and I'm sure there will be some doctors who are a bit not sure where they stand. And the patient says, look, I really don't want to do any more treatment. I want to be made eligible for VAD. Can you say I'm going to have a life expectancy of 6 months? Now, if you care about your patient and you're a bit torn and you don't know what you want to do, you can be swayed to do that as well. And look, every single patient I've cared for till death has a different situation. They have different relationships, they have different loved ones, they have functional families, dysfunctional families, fabulous friends, not so fabulous friends. Everybody is unique, and I hate to think that there is a one option offered that may be misused. And look, one of the things that was a big part of the discussion was, how about that slightly elderly patient who already lives alone, dependent on their children to come and help them? And I've actually seen this over the last 20 years. I've actually had patients say to me, look, I'm really scared about dying, but I don't want my daughter to be not working. She's really struggling with the kids and she has to come and see me. If I went faster, it would just make it so much easier for everybody. And that's heartbreaking. Because those patients that say that to me, it's not their own personal wish that they die tomorrow. They're doing it out of love and concern. And then when I talk to the family, and some of the times the family are there when they say, Mum, don't be stupid. You've cared for me for, all my adult life. I can do whatever it takes to make you have a good death or whatever. But equally, I have family that says, when's Mum going to go? I have to get back to work. No, seriously. It might give a bit of, but I've seriously had those kind of conversations. And it's really tough. It's a really tough part of meeting all the different components. And I guess, if only one person was coerced into asking for VAD when it wasn't their personal wish, and they were subtly coerced into it because of the family, that would be such a tragedy.
And knew I was opening Pandora's box when
I wondered whether one of you would bring that up.
I trust Joy. But it is a
Yeah.
really valid and interesting conversation that I'm sure other people in this room.
And I think one of the things that those of us who were against the bill felt really that it wasn't addressed by the politicians was that many of the horror stories, and some of the horror stories came from the politicians of the loved ones they'd lost, to terrible, terrible deaths, didn't have access to good palliative care. They had no palliative care. Or they had, infrequent palliative care. So, we kept on saying, why can't the money that's been spent, the millions that's going to be spent on getting this program, articulated and monitored, there's going to be a special board that you have to report to within 24 hours of a patient indicating to you they want to take the VAD forward. And there's a certain time limit. You then have to have, 2 qualified healthcare providers who evaluate that it's a consistent thing, blah, blah, blah. They're going to spend a lot of money in getting this operational. And I can't believe that that means that there's going to be more money to put into good palliative care, particularly for people in the regional areas or outside the sort of, metropolitan area, which can get access to the palliative care services that are about. I really put these slides in there just so I could have a breather. So I knew that. Okay, yes, please.
Just quickly, is there a tool available that is working through an advanced care directive that gives you an idea of the kinds of questions that you should be thinking about the answers to?
Yes, there's a website. It's going to be, it's actually out there now. If you look VAD Western Australia, there's a website which is aimed for patients and the community. And there is a multiple page documents for healthcare providers that we have to read. So if you want to, and there are groups, I know that there are a number of the proponents of VAD are setting up meetings around the WA to sort of make people aware that it's there. Sorry. If you just type in advanced care planning or advanced care directive, there are actually forms that you can get from the internet. But essentially it's things like, if something acutely unexpected happens to you, are you going to be guided by your treating doctor? Have you discussed the role of CPR intubation? Do you want to die in hospital? Do you want to die at home? At what point do you want to have no more active treatment but good palliative symptom control?
A range of really good questions that you might not think about under your own steam, but if there's something to stimulate you to think
there are.
about it, then you can start to make those customers.
Yeah, there is. Yes.
Thank you, Annalyn, for sharing your thoughts on the VD. It just makes us think a little bit more about that side of things and understanding your perspective of it.
I mean, I've already had a couple of talks with patients because, they've obviously been looking at it, and one of them was very, very keen. And then we had a big, long talk, and she said, okay, well, I have not seen it from your perspective. I don't believe that there's necessarily a good death. And it was more about, I want to be the one to make the decision when I go. And I said, but don't you want to have that decision assisted? Why would you, you've had treatment with me for so long to keep alive and well. Why would you want to make that decision without knowing what the prognosis is and what the options are? And, so I think for oncologists, certainly within our group here at Hollywood, we're going to be having discussions as to, there's actually a legal remit that if a patient brings up the desire to consider VAD, there's a legal remit that even with my personal views, I have to provide information where patients can get it. So I can give the website. But fortunately, and this is one of the big things that I think we actually got through with my participation, is that there is a clause for conscientious objection. So there will be some of us who will, and I have nothing to hide. I want to, and I actually have said to my secretaries, if a patient's been referred to me for the first time with metastatic breast cancer, I'm very happy to actually say to them what my stance is. I don't want them to be caught seeing me and then saying, well, but Arlene, you don't support me in what I want to do. When I want to die, I want to die when I die. So it's going to have an impact on conversations, I'm sure.
Arlene, there's a group of hospitals also run palliative care centres, and they are saying that they won't support this. So it makes it difficult. So there's another palliative care centre that you cannot go to if you want to use VAD, because you're going to have to go to another hospital.
Yeah. And one of the things I find really, look, I know that none of you in the audience are suspicious of politicians and you think they're real. But in bold, in the information that's out to healthcare providers, if a patient dies as a result of VAD, as the doctor signing the death certificate, I am not allowed to put that in. I will be prosecuted if I actually put that as the cause of death. What I have to do is they died of whatever cancer they had, even though it wasn't the cancer that caused that immediate death. And then I've got to report it by another means to another committee within the health department to say, yes, that patient actually died of VAD. And I question it. There's no justification for that. If you're a believer that VAD is a good thing for the community, why can't they be put on the death certificate? It kind of says to me that there is some concern about the legal remit if it's challenged by a relative, and so forth. So I don't understand that, and no one that I've asked a question to can explain to me why that's the
So
rule.
you're saying a little bit of ass covering.
Yeah, exactly.